That's right. Pleased to welcome back Rachel Doerrie to the Daily Faceoff Show for another edition of Number Crunch. And we were just talking about some all-star snubs. I know that I'm not necessarily a fan of the word, but Nazem Kadri has had an unbelievable contract year for the Colorado Avalanche. When you look at his numbers and you look at his season, one of the big concerns, Rachel, that I had when he got off to such a hot start was, would this be sustainable? What are you looking at in terms of his numbers that might indicate that it is?
Yeah, Nazem Kadri, I mean, pick a season to have your career year. Just absolutely unbelievable. And for all the criticism he's taken, I got to say, on a personal level, like, I'm pretty happy for him. You look, he's got career high in time on ice. He's on pace for a career high in goals. He's leading the NHL in assists. And it's not like a bunch of them are power play points either. He's earning these at even strength. He's on pace for 126 points. I don't necessarily think that's sustainable, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he hit 90. And then you look at it, Dom Lustrician does game score, and he ranks 7th. And the guys he's behind are McDavid, Draisaitl, Brad Marchand, Austin Matthews, Mikko Rantanen. And then games or goals above replacement, which basically is a number that aims to quantify a player's overall impact on the game, whether it's even strength offense and defense, ability to draw penalties, power play contribution, penalty kill contribution, all of that stuff. And he ranks 2nd in the entire NHL. And so for me, I look at it and I go, his shooting percentage isn't really inflated, and he's contributing in other ways on the ice that are boosting just his overall value. And so to me, this is very sustainable. Maybe not the points, but the value he brings to the team, absolutely sustainable.
Nazem Kadri certainly making himself a little bit of extra money this season, but he's not the only one. Rachel, take us through some other players who have caught your attention as guys who are really stepping up in their contract years.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a few guys who are getting themselves paid. And what I've done here is I've just gone UFA. We're not going to do RFAs because they don't really count yet. But we're going to look at Valeri Nichushkin. This is the increase in points per game from last season to this season. So he's basically doubled his production. And even though he hasn't played as many games, he's still playing at least half the games. Evan Rodriguez, I mean, oh my goodness. When Crosby and Malkin were out to start the year, you look at that point pace, he's almost a point per game player. That's absolutely fantastic. So he'll be getting probably a pretty significant raise. Alex Goligoski having a career year with, I believe, 21 points in 29 games. He looks great for Minnesota. Johnny Gaudreau, he seems to have rebounded back to kind of where we saw him at the peak of his powers. And he's over a point a game, and even though Calgary's faltering a little bit, he still looks really good. And then you've got Joe Pavelski, who's in that over 35 contract, and people kind of wondered, is he tailing off a little bit? Well, absolutely not. He is on pace for career high, over a point a game, and I mean, that's pretty hard to ignore. So those are 5 guys, I think, that have definitely earned themselves at least another $1 million on the AAV going forward. And then you got one goalie. And this guy has probably earned himself the most money, with the exception of Kadri, and that's Jack Campbell. He's got 18-5-3. The goals against average, which is more of a team stat, is still extremely low. Save percentage is one of the best in the league at .935. 4 shutouts, and he's on pace for a career high 63 games played. And I believe his career high previous is 31 or 32. So we're talking about doubling the amount of career games played in a season. We're talking about a save percentage that's above .930, and you're playing on a team that's one of the best in the league. This is not going to be a cheap negotiation, and there's a part of me that thinks that Toronto cannot afford him because of how well he has played for them.
Yeah, it's really interesting to watch that development, Rachel, with Jack Campbell. Just a quick one for you in terms of looking at some of those UFAs again. Goligoski a little bit older, Pavelski a bit older. I agree with you that, Pavelski, with the year that he's had, he may have earned himself an additional $10 million total dollars with how well he's played if he gets a 2 or 3 year deal this time around. But how do you, if you're in a front office, how do you manage that? A Goligoski having such a big jump. How does that impact his marketability or on the market this time around next summer?
I think it's really tough, and I think the same goes with Kadri as well. you have to be very wary. You know, especially with older players like Goligoski and Pavelski, that this is not really who they are. You're not going to expect Joe Pavelski to produce at a point per game pace when he's already like 36, 37 years old. So I look at it and I go, guys, you had really good seasons. We know you're not that, but we also know that you've earned yourself perhaps a little bit more money. And the big one for me is I don't like term. So maybe you offer the older guys 1 or 2 year deals at a little bit more money, but you absolutely have to stay away from anything that starts with a 3 year deal or higher, because you're setting yourself up for those age curves to really come back and bite you. The last thing you want to be doing is paying a guy who's on the wrong side of 35 an extra $1 million a year for a year or two too long. That can really screw up your cap space, and we've seen that with more than a few teams. And so I look at it and say, you got to be very wary and you got to be very direct when you have those conversations.
Rachel, the information is fantastic as always. That's going to do it for another edition of the Number Crunch with Rachel Doerrie.